Hello, I am talking with Ali today. Ali is a Western Muslim. You have chosen not to reveal your country of origin, although can I say the continent?
You can see the
Yeah,
continent,
okay,
yes.
so you're North American, which doesn't leave that many options. Um, but anyway, you've actually reached out to me.
I
You
did.
wanted to talk to me after, well, could you tell us why did you reach out to me?
I fell into your channel. I used to follow Sulha with Adar. I don't know if you know him. He's a Israeli who tries to bridge the gap between Palestinians and Israelis and has a lot of conversations. A very good channel. And then yours came up, and then I've watched a bunch of your videos, and there seem to be. I love what you do, where you go to the crux of the issue. You say your biases straight up, where you're like, listen, I am, what do you say, a diehard pro-Palestine, pro-Israeli, sorry, but you listen to the arguments no matter where they come from. And I felt like the Muslim conversation wasn't really there. A lot of it was either very lefty conversations, which were, woe is me, we're like, feel bad for us, and or the very right Israeli perspective, like Dr. Mordechai, I forget his last name, but
Yeah,
Dr.
Mordechai
Mordechai
Kedar. Yeah.
Kadar, yes, yes. Very interesting guy. I like him a lot. I disagree with him vividly, but I like his delivery. And then there was the Israeli who learned Arabic and had a lot of conversations with Palestinians in either Jerusalem and the West Bank. And that conversation got me to reach out to you because I felt like some of the things were out of context. And I understand from his perspective as an Israeli, he's very defensive immediately when he has conversations with Palestinians on the other side. So everything, there's a lot of trigger words. So I just wanted to clarify a few things that I felt were not there in the video.
That's great. You're the first Muslim to well, you're not the first Muslim to reach out to me, but you're the first Muslim to want to talk to me, although you still asked to be hidden, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
I guess it's not 100%, but it's like 95%.
Yeah,
So
it's
that
close to it, but not 100%.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's good. I'll take what I can get.
Yeah.
So what did you want to clarify?
One of the first things he had said was one of the things he had said is that there is a conspiracy that these are not the real Jews, that the Palestinians believe that these are not the real Jews, and that these are fake Jews that got kicked out of England for being bad. I think the Muslim consensus is these are like there's no question that the Jews in Israel are real Jews, because if you think about it, when the Holocaust was happening, Morocco prides itself as not giving up its Jews to the Nazis. And majority of those people now live in Israel. Do you know what I mean?
Can you stop for a
Um,
second? Because I don't think many people in Israel or in the West in general know this story. Can you tell me what, in your estimation, is the Moroccan story? What are they proud of?
so the Moroccan story is that the Nazis requested the Moroccan Jews, and that the king of Morocco refused to give up his Jews, and as an insult to, because the French had taken over, the Germans had taken over France, and then what's it called? Morocco was under French
Vichy
control.
France, yeah.
The Vichy regime, and the Moroccans were asked to give up their Jews, and rather than give up his Jews, he brought a lot of people from the Jewish community and had a dinner with them as a sign of I'm not listening to you, as a sign of defiance. I think there was maybe 200,000 or like a half a million Jews that lived in Morocco at the time, and I think Israel even acknowledges that, and there's a award that goes to the king. I seen the president Herzog have so it is a story. Every Moroccan knows the story, and they will tell you the story.
But how, what does that have to do with like the Jews? Because let me try to steelman the argument that you're trying to argue against, so that you can address it better. Okay.
Yes.
So the argument is, and by the way, I've learned this from personal experience as well, because I've spoken to quite a few Palestinians living in places like Ramallah and Hebron and places like that. And they have repeated this same narrative to me. So I would like to hear your
So
perspective. The
I want to
narrative.
clarify their perspective. I want to clarify their
Wait,
perspective because theirs is
can
different.
I
Go
first
ahead,
say
please.
what I've heard, and then you can say whatever you want. Okay. So what they've said to me is that the Banu Israel, who are referred in the Quran, right? Uh,
Yes.
in the West, like Christianity and Judaism, would refer to these people as ancient Jews, essentially. And Banu Israel, according to the Muslim perspective, they are not the Jews. They don't really have much to do with the Jews of today. These are like different peoples, and some might even go as far as to say that Banu Israel, the sons of Israel, when literally translated, these guys were actually Muslims. So that's the argument, as far as I'm concerned. So now go ahead.
So, two separate. I want to separate two things. There's the Palestinian perspective, then there's the Muslim perspective. And I want to take a second to talk about the Palestinian perspective. The Palestinians believe that the real Jews, the only Jews that exist, are the Samaritan Jews that live in Nablus. That is a thing that Yasser Arafat worked hard to indoctrinate into the people, and that there is no Temple Mount. It's Mount Gerizim, or where that is. So there's that. That's how a lot of Palestinians believe it. Now, coming back to the Jews part, you could be the original Jews were Muslim. Yes, that is the belief. But their actions wouldn't be that different from Jews of today in the sense that the Sabbath is still something that is observed. They can't eat the same foods that they eat. There's a lot of similarities between it. There is an understanding in Islam that the Jews had strayed away and disregarded God. But at the end of the day, these Jews are still the same Jews that because the Prophet had agreements with Jews that were within his area. Umar bin Khattab brought Jews to Jerusalem. These are not a different breed of Jews. It's just the message might have gotten depleted, but the people, as descendants of people, it's the same people.
They're
Does that
still
sort
the
of make sense?
they're still the people of the book. That's how the Quran refers to
They
them.
are the people of the book.
And
Yes.
they're still much preferable to the polytheists, right? Because the way I
Yes.
understand the Quran, it's like a struggle of the Muslims, which are at the top, and
Yes.
then there are the people of the book, which are the Jews and the Christians, and then everyone else are like the basically kind of scum, I guess.
Which is the majority of people.
Yeah,
And one thing people forget is that when Islam came, it came to Mecca, and the number one enemy was the Meccans, were the people of Quraysh. And the Prophet was from that people. So when he's talking about non-believers, he's talking about his cousins, his uncles, his like people that they're related to. And those are the people that it's saying is scum. So when people, when Christians and Jews say, "Oh, look, the Quran is mean to Christians and Jews," I'm like, the Quran is mean to everybody. Like there isn't really no distinction. Everybody that isn't the believer in God is doomed to hell in a way.
yeah.
Obviously,
The
there's
Quran keeps saying it over and over, right? That if
yes,
you're not a Muslim, you're basically well, you're going to hell, and you're
exactly.
not just for a little while. The Quran insists, right? Not just for a little
So
while.
that verse is actually kind of funny because it's in uh let me
It
grab
repeats many
the
times
actual
though this claim, right? It's
so
not just one time.
that one specifically for not for a little time. That whole passage is almost talking to Jews specifically
Yeah, it
because
is.
I believe so, and it's telling them you think that you're gonna be in hell for just a little. That's not a thing. There's no, it's not gonna touch you for just like a little prick. For some people, it'll be eternity. For some people, it'll be a short time. They will be cleansed of their sins, or there's different degrees of judgment according to God's will.
Okay. Okay. So
Does that make
okay. So
sense?
what? Yeah, sure. I mean, well, when
No,
you
no,
say it makes
no.
sense.
From our perspective, from our
Yeah, I
perspective.
get what you mean. So
Listen,
yeah.
things after the resurrection and judgment day and all that stuff, it's very hard to communicate it, but it's not something that's in this world in a sense. Do you know what I mean? So
Are you like a religious Muslim? Just
yeah,
a
I
religious,
love
sure.
Islam. I believe Islam is the true religion, the best religion. Love it to death.
Okay. Okay, so go on. What else did you want to bring to our attention?
Um, the other thing is the last thing I want to talk about. Do you know about the two last Jews of Afghanistan? Have you ever heard of the story?
No.
So so Afghanistan had two Jews that were left, and they hated each other, and they would bicker all the time, so much so that the Taliban put them in prison. There's even a little YouTube clip on it, and then they expelled them to Israel at the end. Said we can't deal with this. Go back to Israel. So the Uzbek Pashtun, like that area, the Jews that come from that area, what I've realized is they're not as persecuted as people that lived in the Arab world. So there's different degrees of how Jews have lived in the Muslim world. Around Arabs, it's a lot more. There's a lot more animosity. But the further you get away from the Arab world, it's a lot easier to live as a Jew amongst Muslims. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, I have actually several thoughts about that, And then, but it also raises the question: Are you of Arab descent?
I am partially of Arab descent, partially of African descent.
Okay, African. Well, so I guess it's not North Africa, right?
No,
Okay.
no.
So,
But I do have family that live in North Africa, but that's neither
okay,
here nor
I
there.
see. So essentially, what I understand is, here's the thing. Well, there have been periods of animosity between Jews and Muslims, especially Jews living on Muslim land. Overall, it's been better than it's been under Christian rule, if we're looking at throughout history, long term. But the um, the worst the worst years basically started, if I were to pick a person who's influenced the Arab perception of the Jews negatively, it has to be Haj Amin al-Husseini, right? The Mufti of Jerusalem. He was,
Sure. Yes.
I guess you could
Yes.
say, in a way, sort of the first Palestinian leader. He's called for jihad against the British, against the Jews. He was active during World War II. He was a favored guest of Hitler. He recruited people to the SS. Was responsible for many inciting much of the violence in the Arab world against the Jews. And my thought is maybe Haj Amin al Husseini did not have so much influence in countries that were not Arab, and this is why what you've been describing becomes possible, right? Because, yeah.
I think Hajj Amin Husseini isn't even known by Palestinians. So when I ask my Palestinian friends about him, they don't know nothing about him. So the thing about Jews are not like Jews as a minority, any minority, no minority wants to live under a majority, regardless of who it is. So it's not unique to the Jewish case. If Kurds don't want to live under Turks, Kurds don't want to live under Iranians, being a minority amongst the majority is a problem, regardless of how you look at it. And the Pan-Arabism during the 60s and 70s was far more anti-Semitic than Islam was. It was completely anti-Semitic.
That's a very interesting take. Can I stop you for a second? Please explain
Yes.
to our listeners really briefly what is the Pan-Arabism of the 60s, and then explain why it is, in your estimation, completely anti-Semitic from a Muslim perspective, right?
So Pan-Arabism with Gamal Abdel Nasser and even Hafez al-Assad, which is Bashar al-Assad's father, like the era, like the 70s, the Muslim world, there was I guess it's the Christians and the Muslims, the Christians as a minority, this is my understanding of it, didn't want to be left as a minority. So they went for the title, we are all Arabs. So a lot of the Pan-Arabism in the beginning was by Christians. And a lot of, after Turkey became secular, this is 100% my perspective and not someone else's perspective.
Sure.
So Turkey became secular, Iran becomes secular. They start to modernize very rapidly, and at the same time, Syria and Egypt and other bigger Muslim, like Arab countries, are trying to find something that brings them together. Because the Pan-Turkism or Turkey, like if you've ever been to Turkey, there's a picture of Mustafa Kemal everywhere. There is a flag. It's almost like Israel, where there's a
Wait,
flag.
I'm just making sure that our audience follows. When you say Mustafa Kemal, you mean Mustafa Kemal Ataturk is basically the
Ataturk.
founding father of Turkey.
Yes.
He secularized it, and he basically made it into what it is today. Although now it's moving in the Muslim
Yes.
direction again. So yeah, please keep
It's
going.
going back to equilibrium. So it went one this way, so it's slowly coming back, and then it'll find the middle. So Egypt tried to replicate something like that. There's a video of Gamal Abdel Nasser laughing at imams who are saying, "Hey, we should put hijabs on women," and he's saying, "You don't even have your daughter doesn't even
Yeah,
wear
I
it,"
know this
and
video.
it's a big joke, you know. So that was the movement of the time, and Israel is in the center of the Arab world because Egypt and Syria combine as one country, and the only thing between them is Israel. So Israel was a impediment to Arab nationalism and Pan-Arabism. It was the thing that was wrong with why Arabs could not succeed, and it coupled up with Soviet anti-Zionism at the same time. Because the Soviets after I think after what is it, the 10th of Ramadan, no, not the 10th of Ramadan, not before the Yom Kippur,
Yeah,
but
you mean
the
67.
67. So after 67, Russia becomes really anti-Zionist, becomes anti, even though they were one of the first to accept Israel as a country, they become very anti-Israel and pretty anti-Semitic. And a lot of that material goes into is what's it called, Palestinian lives and Jordanian lives and Egyptian lives, and anti-Semitism becomes a bigger thing than it needs to be. There's one anti-Semitism. Then there's Pakistani anti-Semitism, which is completely separated from that in a different way. Do you follow my thinking?
I follow. Fix your scarf, though.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's for you.
I appreciate that. Pakistani anti-Semitism comes from the fact that they are a Muslim country, right? The basis of the country is Islam. So anybody that's doing something against Islam is a problem to Islam. So it's almost like Israel being a Jewish country, and anybody that does anything to Jews far away is a problem to the Jewish nation because it's the Jewish nation's job to fix it. Does that sort of make sense?
Okay, let me try to see if I understand. You mean like that Pakistan like
Yes.
takes responsibility for all Muslims in a sense,
That was the underlying ideology because nothing combined all the different nation groups that were to become the country of Pakistan.
except for
Islam
Islam.
was the exactly. So to them, when if you look at the UK, a lot of the people that are anti-Israel are brown Muslims, right?
Yeah, of course.
From the Indo-Pak region, and that theirs is from the Islamic version. But Arabs are very, it's the Arabness more than it is the Islamness. Does that sort of make sense? Like Hamas, for instance, is a nationalist Islamic movement, right? Religiously speaking, in Islam, you
It's
cannot be a
impossible.
national. It's a
Yeah.
contradiction. It doesn't flow,
Yeah, please
right?
explain to our audience why it's a contradiction.
In Islam, you can fight for the sake of, you can defend yourself, you can defend your land and your property. Property is a essential part of who you are and what the state is set to protect. You cannot die in the name of a country, right? You can't say, I am fighting for Yemen and your death is invalid because you died for something that was not for, well, either Islam or for defense of Islam,
But I guess it's easy. So it's kind of smart on Hamas's part because they can play both games, right? For
which
the
they do.
Arabs, they're nationalists, and for the Pakistanis, they're Islamists, right? So that's a
That's
good move, I guess, like strategically speaking.
Khalid Mash'al, the I guess he used to be in Jordan. Israel almost assassinated him, and then
Yeah.
Jordan forced him to. He, to me, I don't think that guy has any religion. That guy is a businessman, and his whole thing is for the national perspective. I cannot be like I think what's his face, the one that Hania. I've seen him lead prayers. I've seen him read Quran. I think that guy believes in God. Mash'al, I believe, is extremely a nationalist. To him, it's about the entirety of the land, and it doesn't matter the religion. Does that sort of make sense? That's where their contradiction kind of comes in. But
Okay.
I wanted to show you a verse of the Quran that they use, and I've seen Khalid, what's his name, Khalid Yassin, Sheikh Yassin.
Sheikh Yassin, the
I've
first
seen
leader of
Sheikh.
Hamas. So tell me
had it.
what verse it is so I can follow along with you.
So لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين إنما ينهاكم الله عن الذين قاتلوكم في الدين. So God forbids you from the ones that kick you out of your homes and that fight you for the religion. This is their justification for war. It's not the fact that it's Jews, it's this, it's that.
Wait, God does not forbid you from, right? Oh my God, there are so many negatives in this sentence. It's so hard to read.
Yes.
Allah does not forbid you from those
Yeah.
who do not fight you because of religion and do not expel you. So many negatives.
Yes.
George Orwell once wrote a famous piece of showing people what is the worst way to write something. And he used this technique as an example. By the
Yeah.
way, I just think like that Muslims believe that like the Quran is divinely inspired and it's the best written piece. So I'm sorry if what I said was offensive.
No, no worries, no
Yeah.
worries. Our belief is that the Quran breaks every rule. If there's a rule that exists, like linguistically or like as a writing technique, the Quran actively breaks it in order to show you that it can still work. That's a whole different technique. But yeah, so the next one is God forbids you from the ones that the next verse is about the ones that kick you out of your homes and that fight you for the religion. So it's a one that shows you negation, and then the other one shows you non-negation in a way.
Okay. So wait. Give me the give me the the abstract.
The abstract is if someone kicks you out of your home and fights you. Those are the two reasons you can fight. If somebody kicks you out of your home, and if somebody fights you because of your religion. It says because you are Muslim, this is the reason I'm doing this to you, right? So those are
Mhm.
the two reasons you're allowed to go like to war, pretty much.
Okay, but now does this right to go to war over kicking you out of your home, is it
Yes.
inherited?
In the sense of like my grandfather's land.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, it can definitely it can be translated as being. Here's the thing: the Quran doesn't give you details, but you can take from this a justification that is almost perpetual.
So you would have claims over the Balkans and on Al Andalus and basically all the way to Vienna, right?
See, not see. Here's the thing: individually, like if somebody says this person got kicked me out of my home individually, then you can be like, this is my house. But there is no. That's why like the Palestinians are not like as unified. When Jews talk about it, they talk about the state of Israel. When Palestinians talk about it, they say as like
My
as an
home.
individual, my home. Exactly. It's
Oh.
about mine. It's not about the collective. Because the Jews think as a collective. Sorry if I say the Jews and it doesn't sound, it sounds a little bit, but Israeli Jews are about the collective, the state of Israel. While Palestinians are like my home in Jaffa, my home in Ashkelon, my home in this,
That's very
right?
interesting because the Jews, most Jews' perceptions would be the exact opposite. Like
Oh,
that, yeah,
really?
because it's like the Muslim Ummah sees itself as a collective, and the jihad is a like a pan-Islamic struggle against the Zionist entity.
See, Islam, as us, we always see ourselves as the underdog. So every perspective we have is as the underdog.
Well, for
But
the
I guess
last
from the
100 years, right, you have been the underdog. So that makes.
even when we lost Jerusalem to the Crusaders, like Salah ad-Din is a big deal because we lost Jerusalem and he was able to get it back.
Hmm.
When the Mongols too, the Mongol attack decimated Islam. Like the scholarship that comes out after the Mongol invasion is different than the stuff before. And it's a lot more militant, it's a lot more hard, it's a lot more because it represents the time that Islam goes through. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
So even one person I wanted to talk to was about Umar. What's his name? Umar Mukhtar. He's a Libyan freedom fighter, and he fights the Italians in the 1909. He's a hero in the Muslim world, right? And the thing is, they're a small number. Muslims always, like even the Arabs, they always go to war as small numbers because when when you're a massive number, we never win. The history of it, even in the beginning of Islam, it was always said that when the numbers are bigger from our perspective, we get cocky and we always lose.
It could
Even during the time.
also it could also be because of the tribal nature of the culture,
That is very true. In some cultures,
the
in some
Arabs
cultures,
particularly.
Egyptian Arabs are not as tribal.
Okay, that's
Egypt,
interesting because Egypt is one of the countries who have successfully developed a nationalistic idea, right? If you
yes,
compare
yes,
Egypt to, say, Syria or Iraq
yes.
or places like that, these places have not really developed a strong national identity, and that's why I guess they're so prone to civil wars and etc.
Yes and no, because Dr. Mordechai was saying that Syrians don't see themselves as Syrians. Syrians are definitely Syrians. Everywhere you go in the world, a Syrian will tell you they're a Syrian,
Yeah, but it's
right?
kind of Syria is kind of strange in a sense in which, like, Lebanon part of Syria? Because many Syrians would say that Lebanon is
Yes.
also Syria, and also
Yeah.
Israel is Syria. Some would say,
Sham. All of it is sham. Yes.
yeah,
Jordan too.
yeah,
Jordan too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's they say they're Syrian, but when they don't mean what you think that they mean, right?
True, but there is a Syrian identity. That's where I contend. Where there's a Lebanese identity that cannot be like, even though some people are like, "Oh, Lebanon never really existed in history." Lebanese are Lebanese. I've met Christian Lebanese. I've met Shia, Sunni. Like I've met, they're all Lebanese. None of them will tell you they're Syrian. Not a single one will say I'm Syrian.
Yeah.
Right? But Syria can lay claim to them, but they have their what's it called? Their understanding of who they are. That's the thing about Palestinians too. When a lot of people are like, "Oh, we'll put them back into like little tribes," it's like the Palestinian identity exists. Yes, in Hebron it might not exist. There might be a little fragmentation of this family and that family, and you can deal and wheel with them. But the Palestinians, especially the ones in the diaspora, truly believe they're Palestinian. The
Oh,
Palestinians in Chile.
I don't think. Okay, so it's true that many Israelis say that it does not exist, but I don't. When they say that it does not exist, I'll try to steel man it. Okay, what I think they mean is it's not that it does not exist. They would just say that, well, if you think you're Palestinian, you're kind of delusional. I mean, I agree that it exists, but you're delusional because it's obviously something that's been manufactured or came into being relatively recently. All this talk about historic Palestine as some sort of national identity is obviously nonsense. So that would be the claim of the people who deny a Palestinian identity. By the way, I don't deny a Palestinian identity, although I do believe that it's new and that it's been a useful tool against the, let's call it the Zionist entity, Israel.
The Zionist. But uh, it's true in a sense that names kind of fluctuate. Like they were Jordanian, they could be Palestinian. If Iraq is ruled by Syrians, like if the Syrian government rolled into Iraq, they don't say that this is before borders or whatever, they can go in. Those people are Syrian. They're not really dying for the name. They're not like, I'm not Syrian. They'll live their lives. They'll do their thing. Nothing's gonna change. If Jordanians take over Palestine, nothing in their life is really gonna change, right? But because Israel is so different, right? They see the difference in front of them. That builds a nationality of we are who we are because we're not them, and a whole identity does spring out.
So
So
what you've done now is I don't know if you've realized it, but you've answered a an Israeli talking point.
yes,
Uh,
yes,
the talking point is that many times the Israelis would say, well, why didn't we hear about a Palestine when Jordan occupied the West Bank or Judea and Samaria and Egypt occupied the Gaza Strip, right? Why did we not hear about Palestine? Uh, so your answer has been, and I'll try to rephrase what you've said so that you can correct me. Um,
yes.
your answer has been because the Jews and the Israelis are so different that it only counts as occupation when a sufficiently different force is the one occupying you. If you're
Yes.
occupied by someone who's relatively similar to you, then it's not really that much of an occupation, something like that.
Yeah, because the similarities are like Rome and Greece, like they're close to each other. They like Belgium becoming literally French, they're really close to each other. But when the Russians take over Poland, the Polish are like, we are not Russian. Like we are our own identity. Like people can say that of the Polish identity. The Polish identity didn't exist in the 1800s in a way. That's what people would say. It came into existence after World War
No,
One.
there's no.
Sorry,
There have
the
been
state
no.
of
There's been a
Poland.
Polish state. Even before the even before the 15th century, right? There's been a Polish superpower actually. So
That's true.
the,
They did fight the Ottomans at in Vienna and saved. I think they saved Vienna.
well, yeah, but even way before Vienna, even way
Right.
before Vienna, they were very strong. Before the Ottomans conquered Constantinople, there was a Polish Commonwealth.
Okay,
So,
maybe I've been looking into
but
Russian
but yeah, it
puppetry.
doesn't matter that much, I guess. Yeah, yeah, you're looking into Russian propaganda. Yeah, it worked.
It gets into everything. It gets into everything. But like Kuwait and Iraq, like Kuwait being a country
Mm,
or Iraq being part of Iraq, it's really not that big a deal. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you're Iraqi, you could say it doesn't really exist. Kuwait. What is this Kuwait thing? It's
Yeah.
the same as us.
Yeah. Okay. So do you want to just show some of your takes on Israel, do some Israel bashing, and we can see how we can discuss that.
Listen, you know what's funny is October 7th, I everyone who's died in this whole conflict, I mourn their death. I don't want to take a side of, someone's mourning, but what I do not like the Palestinian perspectives. A lot of pro-Palestinian perspectives are annoying. They're intersectional, and they cling on to almost anything that's out there. Genocide, apartheid, whatever word is out there, they'll grab it and just hold on to it. And I've gotten away from that. I understand Israel. Jews want a place where they're not persecuted. That is undeniable. Where they're like, hey, we're in charge here. You can no longer touch us the way you guys used to touch us. You cannot kill us. You cannot massacre us. Never again for us. It will never happen again.
Okay, wait.
So
That is not the common Western Muslim take on Israel, as far as I understand.
Well, the thing is, I've looked into it a little bit more. So I'm not saying this is the Muslim take. This is my take. I
Okay.
understand
Because
the situation.
what you've just said is way more forgiving of Israel than what I hear from almost any Western Muslim thinker.
Well, a lot of it is because of America bashing, right? There's America went into Iraq, America did this, Israel is America's ally. Look at what America's doing. So there's that component that's kind of stuck onto it, and then there's the religiously speaking, Yafa has no religious bearing on Islam. Do you know what I mean?
Wait, when you
What
say
does
Yafa, well, just making it clear to the audience. When he
okay?
says Yafa, he means basically the city that's right next to Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
go on.
It has no, but Al-Aqsa. That's why they have to focus on only Jerusalem. Everything else doesn't really matter to the Muslim psyche. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To us, and as you've mentioned a lot, people don't know that the Jordanian Waqf is in charge of that area. But what they do see is Israeli soldiers, and that's what they what's it called fight against. And that's what a lot of Hamas uses. Like if you look at the center of their album, it's Al-Aqsa Masjid, Al-Aqsa, Al-Aqsa, Al-Aqsa. Everything is Al-Aqsa. Every operation has something to do with Al-Aqsa.
Yeah. Yeah, and also I've read many of their newspaper announcements. They have a newspaper that's owned and run by Hamas. It's called Palestine,
Yeah.
and everything is about Al-Aqsa. So
You think it was Mecca. The way they talk about it, you think it's Mecca.
yeah, but it's a way, in a way, like it's a useful tool because it helps
100%.
rally the ummah, right? Because
Yes.
what Hamas keeps saying, when I say ummah, just for the audience, the Muslims, well, I don't want to say all Muslims, but there's this Islamic idea of the ummah, like the nation of Islam, the collective Islam. So when they keep invoking Al-Aqsa, 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 that's the name of the mosque in Jerusalem where the Temple Mount is. They're trying to basically rally the Muslim world behind them and to turn it into a religious war, which benefits them because, of course, there are many Muslims in the world. And to a certain degree, I believe that they have been successful.
From Turkey to Pakistan to
To
Malaysia,
the West,
Indonesia
to the
to the
Muslims in the
West,
West.
they've become far more powerful than the Arab unit. Just saying that because they relied on the Arabs a lot during Arafat's time and before that, but Hamas said no, no, we're going to go through. It's more global, right? So in that perspective, they've garnered a lot of support from the Muslim world, and also when Israel goes to war, they don't show a lot of clips of them winning. Hamas floods the internet. The Arab media, they flood them with videos of this is what we did to Israeli soldiers. Here's an Israeli soldier. The amount of videos that they put out, you have to say, how has Israel not got onto this?
Yeah, I've noticed this that it's in the Muslims, especially in the West. It's easy to follow the Western Muslims because they speak English and they open
Yes,
podcasts and they're on TikTok and they're on X and they're
yes.
everywhere and they have the largest reach. And by the way, they're also the most Islamists from my perspective. Um,
In a way, see, Islam, that's a different word, but yeah, continue.
yeah, okay,
I'll go
I
back to
can
it.
see your reservation. When I said
Yes.
Islamist, I mean like the typical jihadi Islami, like
Yeah, yeah, understand.
okay. So what I can see is that they keep trying to paint this picture, or maybe they do believe in this picture, that the IDF, Israel's army, is being absolutely destroyed. It can't go on, but still they say Israel. Well, they can't defeat Hamas. They can't defeat the combatants, so they go after the women and children, or
Women and
something like that.
children, yes,
If
yes,
they
yes,
if they
yes,
were only to come to the field and face us, brave warriors. By the way, they're in the tunnels. But if you were only to
yes.
come out to the field and face us, we will show you who's
Mm.
manly. There's this thing.
Yes, 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 yes. Or that they hide behind their F-16s and their tanks, but
Yeah.
if they came out to the field, it would be the end of the. But I mean, okay, so the Western Muslim, like the UK, Canada, America, Australia, the collective is Islam is the thing that brings us together. And sadly, the suffering of Palestinians that come onto our timelines. Like I'll be following a verse a day or something on Instagram, right?
Mm.
Like one verse of the Quran a day. All of a sudden, something will happen in Palestine like this. I'm getting dead babies. Just scrolling through dead babies. The amount of dead babies we see is terrifying. I've had to stop looking at some social medias because I'm like, this is too much. Like I can't see anything but dead babies all day. And it gets into the psyche where it's like, whoa, these guys are evil. The only thing they kill is babies, women, and children. Look at this building collapse. They're pulling babies out of rubble. You know, the hospitals. There's an obsession with the hospital. Look at the hospital. Look at the hospital. And it's just that's it.
So
So,
what you're doing so far is you're showing a pretty self-aware take,
oh,
and
100%.
you've told me that you're hopelessly pro-Palestinian.
1000%.
Yeah, so tell me what you mean when you say that, because many of the things that you've said here, I would not characterize you as 1000%. Maybe, well, I'll
Yes.
give you 90, but you've conceded 10. So,
Yes.
so
Yes.
do share more with me.
I don't believe violence works on the Israeli Jews. It's not a tool that's going to be useful. I would like it more if Palestinians were able to like dash with like have peace and then little war, peace and war, like give take, right? The problem I have with Palestinians is that it's 100% everything or nothing. Like we need everyone to return from Jordan, from Lebanon, from Syria. If we don't have all of this, we need justice. They have an obsession with justice.
That's been the problem from the very beginning, since 48, basically. The problem has been they want everything, right?
And that's not so. I want to talk about the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. So this is something that a lot of people bring up when they talk about Islam.
Tell us first what it is and why people bring it up, and then go on.
Okay, so Mecca used to be a place that a lot of people go to worship. So it's a lot of like you're coming in your caravan. It's a place you could bring your idol. You can get some water. You do a lot of business. So the Prophet's whole mission for 13 years was to say there is no such thing. There's only one God. He is invincible. You cannot see him. He's above everything. He gets kicked out of that city. He goes, lives in Medina. It used to be Yathrib, gets renamed to him. I'm giving a quick summary because I want to get to why the deal is important. So he does that. He fights with his cousins and stuff that come from Mecca. They have three wars, and after three wars, and the Arabian Peninsula starts to respect the Prophet. They're like, okay, this guy he can at least withstand a lot of pain. He's building something here. He goes and he wants to go to pilgrimage. So it's a smaller pilgrimage. If you go to Mecca, you're not allowed to be touched. That's the Arabian rule. So they come there with no weapons, and they're like, "Hey, we just want to go to what's it called, Mecca." And the Quraysh, they don't want to feel like they've been humiliated because now their arch nemesis is now coming to their land, and they have to greet him, like Arabs. You have to be able to greet him properly and whatnot. So they meet him before he gets into the city, and they make a deal with him. So 10 years, no war. Your allies will be your allies. Like we won't touch your allies. You don't touch our allies. If something happens between our allies and your allies, we have to come together as an arbitration and find some fix. So no war, 10 years. And if a Muslim leaves Mecca and goes to Medina, he has to go back to Mecca. He has to go back to his family. He cannot come to you, right? So right when that's happening, a man escapes from Mecca and he wants to join the Prophet. And the Prophet says, "We haven't signed. We're not done with the deal. Like we're still in negotiation. Why can't we have this man? Let him join us." And they say, "No, this is an example. We want this as proof that you will keep your word. So we're taking this man back to his father, right? For punishment for leaving his grandfather's religion or his great grandfather's religion. Like, how dare you join this other man?" So at that moment, he has to give up one of his own, but for the greater good. So he makes a compromise and says you can have him. And any Muslim that tries to escape, he has to be the first person to reject him and send him back to Mecca. So in that case, that lasts for 10 years, not 10 years, it lasts for 3 years, I think, until the Quraysh do something. But the point is, the Prophet concedes a little to get some. And the Palestinians, my perspective is, my job is to help the Palestinians get what they want, right? And one of it is saying, okay, listen, the people in Lebanon are never coming back. Like we have to accept the fact that they have to live there now.
You're
The
talking
people in
about the right
Syria,
of return.
it's not happening.
Yeah.
That is something you have to give up, right? Then you could start talking and talk more practical and give that part. There's some parts that you have to give up. The people that live in Jordan are living fine, right? Yes, get them out of the refugee camps. Let's build them some lives, but that part we have to give up. The people that want to go back to Ashkelon in Gaza, maybe there's something you could do there, but there's no way that you're all going to flood. But when peace comes over 100 years, 150 years, and you start to move around, and Israel liberalizes its land and says, okay, anybody can buy land. That's the key point, is that Israel has to liberalize its land policy.
Jews
Then
can't
you might
buy
be able to
land,
go
by
back.
the way, in Israel also. You're not buying the land. Nobody can buy the
No,
land.
that's what I mean. One of my things is when Saudi Arabia and Israel have their whatever kumbaya, the Saudis have to break that rule where they have to liberalize the land. That's a hope and a dream that I have one day. That way, Palestinians, if they want, they can buy their land back. Find a different way. It's not just war. You can't just go to war and just be like, "Woe is me." There's got to be some shaking and a little bit of movement and a little bit of
But what I'm hearing from you is kind of like the what's called in the West the moderate Sunni perspective. Right, the like the UAE Saudi perspective on things. This is
Yeah,
what.
the UAE cares about the UAE. They don't care about it. Look at what they're doing in Sudan. They do not care
Oh yeah,
about, they care about themselves,
yeah, that's
right?
true.
Like they are upending an entire nation and giving it to rebels that do not belong there, and literally watching Sudan burn. They care about their perspective, right? Saudi has its own concern that it needs. And here's the other thing that I think a lot of Muslims don't realize is that Jews have to use their own blood to die, but Muslims, we have America in a way. The Saudis are protected by America. If Iran wants to take over Mecca, it'll be American troops that will be fighting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
While
this is not the Muslim take. What you're just saying to me, I never hear any Muslim say this.
because there's 2 billion of us,
Is it
so we
bec-
have so many different perspectives.
Wait, but is it because you're hidden so you can speak freely? Is this what's happening? No,
No,
seriously.
I tell this to my family and friends. This is because I have a job, I have a life, and I don't need the internet,
Okay.
coming into my world at the same time. But I do like these perspectives. Like I talk on Discord a lot. I try to have conversations with different people. Perpetual war is just not in our world. It's not useful to anybody.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean?
I think everyone will agree with that. Both the Israelis and even Hamas would agree with that. But the
Yes.
Israelis would say, well, we have to protect ourselves, and Hamas would say, well, they're killing us and occupying us and whatever, so we have to fight or something like that.
If I'm being honest, 40,000 dead is crazy, right? Let's look at perspectives first and foremost. Muslims, America likes Muslims when they're Bosnian or when they're Kosovo, and the Serbs are coming to attack them, right? 8,000 people, that's a genocide. They'll stop. They will come and bomb them, right? Israel has a different perspective where it is protected by the West in a way, right? Going to protect 40,000 dead is not, it could have been worse. 400,000. It could have been 400,000. It could have been 500,000. I don't think we are appreciative of what America has kind of done to like slow it down a little and be like, hey, man, you went crazy in the beginning.
Mm,
You need to slow the hell down. Because until I think the first 3, 4 months, Israel, I seen some people that came back from Gaza, and one guy was saying every 8 seconds I could hear a bomb falling, 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 falling. And then America was like, bro, you need to cut this out.
listen, you're probably correct. I also agree with that. But again, this is I've never like I thought I was gonna speak to a Muslim, was gonna really lay it down, but
Listen, Salah ad-Din was a very pragmatic man, right? So when he was liberating, the thing is, there should be pride in what you do. There is no pride in. There has to be a pride in the way that you conduct war. Do you know what I mean? If you win and you win in an ugly way, it's not worth it. There's pride in Salah ad-Din because everybody accepts that Salah ad-Din was a great man. Like the Christians say he's a great man, the Muslims say he's a great man, even the Jews, some of them say he's a great man. So it's something that we all share and we could be proud of, right? Blowing up a bus with kids in it, I can't understand how to be proud of that.
so wait a minute. So let me try to ask you something more directly.
Okay.
Um, do you think that Hamas is intentionally making things more difficult for Israel by embedding itself in underneath basically civilian population, and that it does so because it knows that killing civilians gets Israel in trouble internationally?
I think that's an added bonus, but uh, Israel has air superiority. That is the thing that sets it apart from any other nation around it, right? When Nasrallah was giving a speech before he died, and while he's giving a speech, Israel flew F-16s right through to say, "Hey, listen, you can say whatever you want, but we have air superiority. Like we own this air." So there is a practical reason to building tunnels and getting rid of the air superiority and getting it and shaping the landscape in how you want it to be shaped,
Sure,
right?
but you have to build them underneath, like where your schools are and your mosques and your hospitals.
True. That I completely I despise it. I
But
hate when
do
they
you
put
see
people in.
this as Israeli propaganda, though? Do you see like the claim that I just made as just Israeli lies, Zionist lies, or do you see it as probably true?
I think it's partially true and partially not true. I think part of it is true in the sense of you cannot deny when you look under and you're like, hey, there's a tunnel under this kid's house, like this kid's room. You cannot deny that. But to say that that's the only tunnels that they built, I think there's a lot of
Oh, of
sophistication.
course, yeah.
into how they do it. I think Israel focuses on the part that makes them look bad and doesn't focus on the part like because there's tunnels that went into Israel that went into some of the kibbutzes. Like they went underneath and went straight into the to areas, right? I think 2014 they had attack tunnels.
Yeah, they had attack tunnels, although October 7th has, I think, one of the moves that Hamas did to fool the Israelis was to pretend as if they were going to attack through the tunnels when actually they went above.
They went over. They
Yeah.
went over. Yeah. And see, if they had just gone to soldiers, and I understand some of their techniques where they're like, okay, you have to hold land, because in some areas they went in and they're like, okay, the front is going to be Israel's land. It's going to be in their land, and then they have to come push back. So in a sense, I understand that. It is horrific.
Sure, it's basic warfare. That, yeah.
It's basic. If this was the 1800s, no one would question what they did. They'd say,
No,
yeah, you
they
go
would they
and you
would
push through.
question the treatment of civilians still.
Agreed.
You don't have to
Agreed.
burn them and to
Agreed.
execute them, right? You can just occupy the place. You don't have to burn
Yes.
and rape and whatever, okay?
And but then the Palestinian was you could not bomb us from the sky. You could do it some other way because bombing from the sky is. I've seen the guy that came back. His eyes were not the same as when I saw him before. His eyes are like this, like wide-eyed, like constant bombardment coming after. Completely changes a person's
Yeah, I can only imagine. Like,
mindset.
I used to live about 40 kilometers from Gaza, and about 12 years ago, there was a heavy round of fighting, and I remember hearing the explosions all the time from Gaza. And also, I remember that there would be one explosion, and then many additional smaller explosions, which are probably the Hamas missiles exploding, the rockets, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes. Ammunition.
Israel bombs, and then the ammunition explodes. And I remember thinking, if this is what I'm hearing,
Oh man.
yeah,
Oh
know,
man. I feel so bad for a lot of Palestinians because this is constant. It's like you can't escape it. It's a small area.
yeah,
Whatever bomb falls,
you can't
everyone's
escape
hearing.
it. At the same time, I'm not
Yeah.
sure like what Israel could have done differently now. I really don't see, like, of course you can go through history and point at some
Yes.
mistakes that Israel has made. For example, I think like if you were to say the 78 war, what you called, I guess because you were Muslim, you referred to it as the 10th of Ramadan, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
the Muslims call
I,
it by a different name.
yes. Because it was a holy time for them and for us. So it's not
Yeah.
like it was.
So the Yom Kippur War, the 10th of
Yeah.
Ramadan, or the War of 73, whatever you want to call it,
Yes.
that war could have probably been avoided if Israel would not be so stubborn and more
Yes.
trusting, because they were distrustful of the Egyptians, and the war could have probably been avoided. I agree with that, but
But Egypt. So here's the thing about the 73 war. So something that a lot of Islamic rulers do is that when they need something, they crack open Islam and then they try to close it right back up when they're done with it. So they use it to their advantage. Like for instance, Sadat used Islam as a way to garner
wait,
people. Anwar
tell
Sadat.
our listeners who Sadat is.
Anwar Sadat, who was the president of Egypt,
Okay.
used to show as a very religious man, right? And the war in 73 was we have to fight the Jews. So that was one crack where they unleashed I guess people say Islamic fundamental, but like Islamic warfare onto Israel. And people say a lot of people are like, okay, Israel won at the end. And I find a lot of Israelis give themselves credit at the end and go like, oh, we won at the end. But it's like, yeah, but Egypt got everything they wanted.
Yeah.
They got the Sinai back. They got a new contract with the US. They
Yeah.
said whatever they get, we
It
get
was a
half of.
military victory. It was not a strategic victory. It was
It was a
you could call it a stalemate. It was as if
Yes.
the war never happened. Like you could have negotiated before, it would have been the exact same for Israel.
But Egypt got everything back. Egypt got everything that was theirs back, right? So they didn't lose anything. Syria, on the other hand, they got screwed.
Well, so there is actually a strategic achievement here for Israel. Now that I think of it, you've just made me think of it. And
Yes,
the
yes.
strategic achievement is the breaking of Pan-Arabism. That's essentially a strategic consequence of the War of 73, right?
Yes, yes.
Because
yes,
once
yes.
Egypt moved to the American side, and became dependent on US assistance, on which it is dependent to this day. And if it weren't dependent on US assistance, I don't think its
Yeah.
peace treaty with Israel would have lasted.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. And
Yes.
and that's my thing about the Abraham Accords. It's like, yeah, the Abraham Accords, but Morocco got the what's it called, the Sahara
Yeah.
Desert or Western Sahara. Dubai got a nuclear power plant. Do you know what I mean? Like it's it's a deal with Israel, but it's literally a deal with the US. It's not a real
Mhm.
deal between neighbors. It's a deal between a third party. Hey, we'll sign with Israel, but you do something for us.
But I guess with the UAE, it's a little bit better because I know that many Israelis are actually doing business in the
Yes.
UAE, and
Yes.
also, and I guess in a way, business is the best way to develop healthy, well,
Yes.
neighboring relations, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I
A
guess that
strong
could help.
army and business. A strong army and business.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with Israel being a strong military or whatever, right? But I want the people, the Palestinians, to be treated properly and them to have a good life.
But wouldn't you say that much of the reason why the Palestinian people have been treated so badly over the years is their leadership's absolute failure to deal with Israel? Like,
I I agree and I disagree. Here's one thing. One of the things that Hamas says is Israel left Sinai by force. They left Lebanon by force. They left Gaza by force.
mhm,
The only way you can move is by force, right?
yeah.
And sadly, the Oslo Accords breaking led to Hamas getting so powerful because they said what you tried to do in 10 years, we did in four,
Wait, but
right?
this is kind of you just said that the Oslo Accords breaking made Hamas powerful, but you could also say the other way around, right? Because it was Hamas getting powerful that broke the Oslo Accords, right? That's the second
Yes.
Intifada. That's Hamas.
Yes. Yes. But the second Intifada happens in the 2000s. The Oslo Accord starts in the 90s, and it was supposed to be a 5-year process, right? So within that 5 years, if something had come to like an actual Palestinian power had come, listen, Palestinians are a problem to Israel if they're peaceful or if they're not peaceful. If they're a military, it's a problem, but if they're a demographic, it's also a problem. So there's within Israel, they have to figure out what it is that they can do. Like this whole, there'll be non-voting residents. It's a dumb idea because they're gonna turn into voting residents in like 50 years. They'll just have to
No, I
go
don't
to the
think that's
West.
really on the table. Like some people talk
It's
about that. It's not seriously on the table.
it's not seriously on the
Uh,
table.
I think what's probably Netanyahu's dream solution, although he would never say it, uh, is some sort of like Palestinian autonomy. That's well, basically like a reformed Palestinian authority in a sense.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That on one hand, listen, you guys, please govern yourselves. We don't want to occupy you. We don't want to govern you. But on the other hand, when you start to develop terrorist cells, we are going to go in there and we are going to pull these people out.
Yes, yes,
This
yeah,
is, I
yeah.
think, and also at the same time, gradually, as you see that this thing is developing peacefully and with good relations, then you can start giving, more and more concessions to that entity, right? The Palestinian entity, whatever you want to call it, a state or a semi-state or whatever. And then you make it some sort of gradual process. I believe that would be what Netanyahu would want. He would never say it because it would cost him
No,
politically.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but also I guess that's what the Arab rulers want, but they would never say it because it would
No.
cost them politically.
Listen, they need that pipeline to the Mediterranean. They need the pipeline to the Mediterranean. They do not want anything getting in the way. These pesky Palestinians.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I see it as well. That the
Yeah,
Palestinians for the Gulf states, they're a
yeah.
nuisance because they're a nuisance, and it
You
would have
know,
been better. I think back when Israel was formed, when the Arabs basically lost in '48.
yeah.
That's where the tragic mistake has been made. Because
Yes.
you could have said, we lost, okay? Our brothers, the Arabs, our Palestinian Arab and Muslim brothers, we will now accept them and integrate them. But
Yes.
instead, what they chose to do was to say, we are now going to use these people as a
Mm,
battering ram
mm,
against this cancerous Zionist state, which we want to remove anyway. And
mm,
this is our cause for war. These poor people, which we keep in refugee camps, we're not going to make their lives better, even though we
mm.
control them, right?
Yeah,
We're going
yeah,
to use these people against the Israelis. And for this take, Palestinians today, the young Palestinians today, are still paying
yeah.
the price
See,
for so long.
The only thing I'd say is that was Syria. Syria believed that because they would use the Palestinians against the Lebanese. They used them as militias. So the Syrian understanding of how they wanted to do it was that's what it was. Jordan is really good to Palestinians. Like Jordan is very good to Palestinians. Like they
Yeah.
educate them well. They can get good
I
jobs.
think
Jordan
Jordan's
is
the only country that naturalized the refugees, that gave them
exactly.
ID cards, right?
Yes,
The
yes, yes.
Egyptians kept the Gazans a separate entity, and
Yeah, yeah.
they used them against Israel when it was comfortable, and they didn't use it when it was
But they're
not comfortable.
culturally different though. But they're culturally different. The Gazan Palestinians and the Egyptians are they are neighbors, but they're culturally Egyptians are different
I
than the
do
region.
agree that Egypt as an Arab national identity is unique.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
have to agree with that. Yeah, but
Yeah.
they're
So
Egyptians more than they're.
the Arab.
Yeah, and
They're
if
Egyptian more than
they're
they're Arab.
and more than they're Muslim, and if they the Muslim movement in Egypt is basically outlawed,
Yeah, it
right?
got
It's being
outlawed now.
suppressed.
Yes. Yes, it's been suppressed.
Although when there was a free democratic election, that's the movement that got elected. So there is
They were the
strong
only ones,
support.
but they were the only ones that were organized. It's the same in
Yeah.
Iran. They were the only ones that were organized. The liberals are never organized, and they're all pesky. But Egypt is still the place to go if you want to learn Arabic, if you want to learn the Quran, if you want to learn Hadith. It's still an Islamic hub. Like all these places are still Islamic hubs. Like Syria still has a component of it that is like in Damascus that people will go to because there's I don't know if I guess Judaism has this where there's certain rabbis that are very knowledgeable and people go out to them to get knowledge from. Islam has that where people go to Yemen. There's I don't know if they still go there. They used to go to Yemen, Egypt, what's it called,
It's
Syria,
like some sort of
Mauritania.
religious studies tourism of something like that.
In a way, yeah,
Yeah.
where you get different knowledge. Well, it's a culture, it's an old cultural thing where in order to get knowledge, you have to travel because there's because when Islam spread, people were in Iraq, people were in what's called Bukhara, people were in Egypt. So you'd go to different places to get just a little bit of hadith. Like what did the Prophet say? Okay, he said this. You get it from that person, then you move on to the next person. And Hajj, which is
It's
a
like a
you know
pilgrimage.
but so many people come that it's almost like an annual conference of scholars because that's where you're going to meet people, right? Around the world. You're going to meet people at Hajj because
Yeah.
the most smartest or the most what's it called? The knowledgeable people will try to go there once a year in a
Ali,
way.
so actually, this conversation has gone in ways that I did not expect at all. Uh, so you said you wanted to talk to me. You said I'm hopelessly pro-Palestinian and stuff like that. But
Yes. Yes.
I think
But I
now I
understand the
want.
Jewish struggle. I understand the Jewish struggle. Like I've spent time trying to understand like what happened in the Russian Empire, what happened in Europe, like what exactly is it that is the cause of all of this? That the Jews are willing to die and stay here and not move an inch. Because there's this thing that every time there's a war, like I remember 2014 really well. One of the first things that come out, oh, the Jews are leaving in droves, right? This is every time there's a
They
war,
always
the
do
Jews
that.
are leaving in droves.
Even today, they say they're leaving because the narrative, the Palestinian, and even the I guess the axis of resistance, right? The Iranian
It's a
narrative.
Lebanese, yeah, yeah.
The narrative says that Israel is so close to disappearing. All we need is to push a little bit more. We just need a little more fighting, a little more war.
Yeah,
Look, the Jews are fleeing. They're running
yeah,
away. That's the narrative,
yeah,
and that's what
yeah.
people believe. So that's why they want to exert pressure on Israel. And actually, it's part of their plan. And
Yes,
what worries me is that it justifies terrorism. Because if you believe this, then terrorism is a
yeah,
great idea. Because
yes.
if you really believe that the Jews are so close to just running away and they don't really feel connected to the land, so that's why it's easy to scare them off, it makes military sense to bomb civilians, to blow up a bus.
I'll add one more to that. I believe the rocket firing is a form of terrorism too, in a way, because it forces what's called Israelis to run to bomb shelters like constantly, constant fear something's gonna happen. So then they just play with it a bit too. But at the same time, Israel does a lot of bad things too. So I'm not here to say. I'll give you an example. Like Haniya, like Ismail Haniya, Israel killed his children, his grandchildren, and him. So it's a whole a whole line. I think that's
Well,
terrible. Yeah, I think
look, here's the thing though. You know what? I'm not going to talk about Hania because it's one person. So I'm going to talk
yes,
about like
yes,
the system. Here's the
right.
thing. When Israel does something quote unquote bad, okay, let's not define bad. So let's say when Israel does something bad, basically there's a system around it that is used to minimize this. Like if a soldier were to line someone up against the wall and shoot him, then the system is basically turned against this soldier now. He will be basically prosecuted, right? It's illegal.
I believe that when I think the military it is, but I don't think socially it is. Because socially, I believe anytime a soldier does something, it's but what did
Socially,
they do?
it's yeah, true, but
Were
socially,
they a terrorist? Did they have a gun?
true, but socially, it's like there it wouldn't be overwhelming to what you're saying. It will be like it will be a debate. There will be a debate
Yeah.
about it. Okay.
Yes.
But
Yes. Yeah.
in the from Palestinian society, if you go out to a kibbutz and you burn a house with the entire family inside it, you will
Yes.
never be prosecuted. No one will ever
No.
so much as give you a slap on the wrist.
Fun fact, I heard in 48, I think it was 48, that a Jordanian soldier, I think he killed an innocent a Jewish person, and he was actually prosecuted for that. Because the Jordanians, I guess under the British system,
Exactly,
were
because of
very
the British.
structured, right? They structured them. And one of my things is I believe that the second Intifada, all the bus bombings and all that, I believe it was really heavily influenced by the Iraqis because when the Americans went to Iraq, it was insane. When they describe Iraq and when they describe Afghanistan, it's two different wars. Like Afghanistan sounds like they're fighting people. Iraq, it sounds like it's just anything could happen at any moment. You have no idea what's happening. Like people are blowing themselves up, they're putting bombs in babies, they're doing crazy stuff. When the Iranians when Hamas went to the Iranians, I think they switched gears because suicide bombing is not looked at well in the Muslim world. Like nobody likes suicide bombings. Like there was a sheikh that used to try to justify it. His justification was stupid.
Do you know how the Palestinians call suicide bombings? They have a name for it.
Operations.
Yeah, martyr operations.
Martyr operations, yes. Mu'amalat, yes. Yeah, yeah. And I 1000% think that is an abhorrent thing. But I also think there's no difference between if you're in a what's it called bus and you blow it up and if you're in a plane and you drop a bomb on a bus. I think those are
Well,
morally equivalent in my eyes.
if you deliberately drop the
Yes.
bomb, okay, well, these are, well,
Agreed.
they're not exactly the same, but they're quite similar. I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
So like if you hit a soldier versus if you hit a civilian, two different things. Like the stabbings, the stabbing attacks, the stabbing intifada that was happening in 2021, 2022. Disgusting. It has nothing to do with Islam. Like you can't just go and murder random people.
well,
To me,
Ali,
that is
actually,
wild.
I really like this conversation, but we're out of time.
Oh,
But
sorry about that.
no, it's been terrific. Thank you so much for coming on. And I do hope
Appreciate
if more Muslims are listening to this and you want to talk to me,
Yes.
please come on. I'll be happy to speak to you. You can hide your face as you saw Ali doing here.
And
There's no problem.
you can be pro-Palestinian, 100% Muslim, and understand that Jews are humans and not be like they don't have to be the enemy of everything. There's a geopolitics in life. There's an understanding that needs to come to. You need to understand the other person's perspective. So that's what I would want other Muslims to look into. Like look into the Jewish perspective. Look at how they got here. Look at the history that they went through, and see them as humans and not as okay. They're just the enemy. You know, we have to fight them consistently to the end of the earth.
Ali, I
It's not something that's
think
reasonable.
if most people of most of the Palestinians were like you, it would have been way easier to make peace and have a lasting solution.
No. I'll talk to the Palestinians, you talk to the Israelis.
Yeah,
That's all, kumbaya.
yeah.
Muslim Jewish kumbaya.
So thank you, Ali. Thank you very much.